let's be honest about 2-3 things. One, prices in the Western world will never grow like they grow in India.
Okay.
You know, so हमें यहाँ पे आता है कि यार आज 100 रुपए का घर है, कल 200 रुपए का हो जाएगा, परसों 300 का. Why? So I'll answer that question also. I'm a member in CREDAI. CREDAI is the Confederation of Real Estate Agents of whatever I know of India, something like that.
Okay.
So it's the premier body of the real estate developers. So one of the proposals that they are very strongly mooted in front of the central government right now is, if you look at any of the West, no, don't go to West, look at Japan, look at Tokyo. I don't know if anybody had the chance to go to Tokyo. Tokyo, the smallest building is I think some 38 story or 40 story. Whereas in India, you go to Delhi, then Delhi ka go to Gurgaon, Gurgaon ka tum let's go to Manesar, Manesar Dharuhera. So we are expanding like this, and we are not expanding like this. It's not because we don't have technology. We have the best of technology, we do the best of flyovers now, we have a sea rail link, etc. etc. It's the mindset of the government that is not there. So I think, coming back to your question, I think so that mindset one has to be corrected. That if you are eyeing that I am buying an asset there, which will overnight grow into, you know, so right now I think I'm buying a cheap hotel at X amount, it's not gonna be 2x or 3x, because that's not how Western world operates. Second, if you don't have reasons of visas and all those things, I think you as an entrepreneur have to very clearly identify how would you manage that business, because you have a business here. You can't sit and operate a business in the US, especially if it's a hotel or, you know, business which is in a public dealing. In a public dealing business, the risks are that much higher. So for example, in a education or a hospital or a hotel industry, the risks of getting, you know, bust or getting bad names are much higher than as against a service industry or a product industry that are run. So I think that managing that operation or an entity, what is the objective? I think that is what people need to be clear about. So objective is very important, because if it's wealth multiplier, that's not going to happen. If it's visas, then it's fine. Most of the people are doing it for visas, especially from this part of the world.
You wanted to add something?
No. I think yes, that has given a comprehensive view. So, my personal take, which has a 100% chance of getting wrong, is that everything boils down to the numbers, right? So risk, right? Your evaluation, whether it fits into your this thing, whether you have bandwidth or not, it all depends on the value, on the price, right? Supposedly you don't need Taj Mahal, right? You can't afford to maintain a Taj Mahal, but if you are getting it for ₹5, you will still go for it.
Yeah.
So same is the case. I don't need a hotel. I don't have a bandwidth to manage a hotel in US, right? That doesn't fit in my 15 years plan. Nowhere it is there, right? I don't need visas. I already have it, but still I'm getting it for $500. Let me go and have it. So that is what people are doing, and it's a good also. So because one, if you do due diligence in a perfect way, you would never be able to buy a company. Right? You would find n number of reasons to leave it in between. So it has to be done on the gut, right? Plus, for every risk and every challenge, right? The cultural challenge, the financial challenges, the legal challenges, you have to keep a cushion, right? And discount the price to the limit. Okay, if things go bad, I need not buy, right? So जैसे हमारे आम कहावत है कि आपने कोई भी घर खरीदा, ब्रांड न्यू बिल्डर ने कंस्ट्रक्टेड, ठीक है, बिल्कुल ready to shift in. Still, for your own sake, you would input some 5 lakhs, 3 lakhs, depending upon your budget. वो आप नेम प्लेट अच्छा लगाओगे, कुछ उसके अंदर अच्छा कर लोगे, कुछ तो चेंज करोगे. Similarly, you buy a brand new Merc from, say, Carnival. Still, if you are going home, you will put something onto it कि यार ठीक है कि मैं कुछ तो करवा ही लेता हूँ इसके अंदर. So same is with the company. If you buy it for 15 crores, for example, then you take the price to be 20 crores. You have to keep 5 crores of cushion. कि कुछ लोग छोड़ के जाएंगे, कुछ फाइनेंशियल इरेगुलरिटीज होंगी, कुछ लीगल इश्यूज होंगे, कुछ डिलेज होंगे, कुछ कल्चरल इश्यूज होंगे, कुछ चर्न होगा, ठीक है, एम्प्लॉय होगा, तो उन सबको आपको डिस्काउंट करके तब कंपनी को करना है.
My question is very regional specific, and so both of you just acquired a company and you are a professional. I have been an M&A tax lawyer, been involved in a lot of M&A back in UK. Most of the acquisitions I was involved in were, for other managed businesses and a lot of mid-market acquisitions also. What I saw in UK was that even for other managed businesses, there was some kind of strategic plan. Let us suppose somebody was in an X business. The first acquisition which you might make might be a very similar business. You don't go straight away from X to A or A to Z.
Sure.
Coming back to Chandigarh, you've been in this region not for long, like you said, it's been a month.
No, I've been here for last 3 years. Otherwise,
that's good.
Yeah.
Mostly in Punjab, Chandigarh, it's still owner-managed businesses. M&A has become a very fancy word also.
Yes. Everybody wants to do M&A.
You and me, accountants and lawyers are approaching professionals or businessmen, go for acquisition, get PE investments. What are the downsides, risks from? And do you think in this region, it's very important for businessmen to see that the business they're acquiring, whether they have any understanding, they're straight away going from X to Z. Just this region-centric experience.
I'll answer that question also, and I think he's acquired a couple of assets, and I think he's acquired in the same line as I know, more or less.
So it is not that I manage all those businesses myself.
Absolutely.
So I got an opportunity. So there was one company, but that was very small in size. So that didn't make any sense for me, right? So I had somebody in my mind who was totally out of that domain. He never knew about that domain and about how to run a company. But he was a guy who had a business background, right? So I asked him, I convinced him, he acquired that company. So I played your role basically in that. And the guy is doing fantastic business. So the problem of this region still is they don't understand whether a business can be sold. Right? They have beautiful businesses, but for some reason or the other, if they have to change or do away with the business, the only option coming to their mind is to close it down. Right? And talking about what we call SMEs in this thing, but more from a sole proprietorship perspective. But the size of the business is decent, right? It can be scaled up also, and at that particular time also it is at a very good level. But still they don't think that there is an option that somebody can come and buy it and run it, right? And so so a lot of businesses in this region get closed up, whereas they had a lot of value at that moment of time. So the ecosystem needs to educate them that yes, there is an option of exiting, right? Some people should start working on that level of getting the sole proprietorship businesses sold off. So there is a beautiful website called Businesses for Sale, right, which is doing that. And I think it's doing very fantastic business.
I completely agree, because a lot of businesses in the region, they don't sometimes even think beyond sole proprietorship. They don't know what entities are in the market for LLPs who come from the partnership. Obviously, you need another person to actually have that business. But people are still very stuck up to that sole proprietorship thing.
Right.
I want to be the owner as such.
Yeah, they don't want to lose control.
But in a sense, I would still say that not every business has to be sold. But you said a very important thing. There are businesses which are closing down instead of availing those options.
Right, exiting options.
So, but again, it's like a few days back, Mr. Pratap Agarwal was there and he was said that it's very important that you should understand that what your own nature is. If you are not going to be temperament. If you can't work with another person, like you bought over business, I don't know, somebody else might be managing. If you don't get along, then it's going to be a disaster for you and for the employees. So you have to understand your own temperament. Legal, tax, IP issues, technology is absolutely very important, and how much you're buying for, how much you're paying for it, whether it's going to be earn out or something. But those temperament, it's a small acquisition, it's very, very important.
The hierarchy should be clear, right? So it should not be a partnership approach after the acquisition. It should be very clear that who is the boss and who is on his way out, right? Who can be out anytime. So if that is clear, I don't think there is an issue.
So how can you make it clear? Is
Okay.
there any legal document that you create at that
Yeah. So we have a clear
Just
cut-
share purchase agreement
Yeah.
or
Yep.
shareholders agreement.
That is there, right? There is a very clear-cut program for the existing promoter on his exit, right? So we agree to an exit that in 3 months you will not
Yeah,
be
you
there,
articulate that.
right?
Like
And-
in the case of Ranbaxy and Nigeria,
Mm.
I think the promoters are still on the board for some time.
No. So what was there was, because I was personally involved, they had a 3-year locking to Mr. Malvinder Singh, but they realized that they don't need him after I think 4.5 months.
Okay.
So he was so they paid him 3 years of salary,
Salary,
and he was.
And it
He walked
was
out.
generally agreed during that also.
Yeah, so you
that
do it-
this
yeah.
time we would write it down that you are there for 3 years. It is our understanding. It would go into the public that we are together for 3 years, but we are very clear that this is for 4 months.
So this is where the age, there is no somebody who's 35-year-old and he has a business and
Yeah.
he's out there to sell it, and somebody who's 60. And there is a lock-in period, or there is already an agreement that after 3 years you will be totally out, we go totally quiet the business, we need your services for 3 years. For a 60-year-old person, still, okay, I'm 63, I retire. But somebody who's 35, at 38, you realize you completely lost control, you have the asset.
So, but then you're mentally prepared that you have to set up.
The-
Like,
it's
the
very
reason that you
important to
sold out,
understand.
yeah, you sold out was that you
Because
either got a
sometimes
good
at
price,
this young
yeah.
age you think you have the money, but suddenly at 38 you have to start all over again. At that moment, 35, you thought I would have that pot of money, but that might fizzle out later on. You might think, okay, I have 5 crore of rupees, but now I have to set up another business.
No, but I personally think different because I think a classic example is Sabir Bhatia,
Yeah.
who sold out Hotmail. He was I think 16 or 18, 19 years probably.
Not generalizing at all, absolutely.
So
There are
I
people
think
who
I think once you sell out, obviously there are clauses of non-compete, etc., which are imbibed as a part of a standard agreement. But you are mentally prepared, as he said. So that agreement, might be for 3 years, but mentally you might be prepared that you're gonna kick him out for 4 months, 5 months, or 6 months till the time you take that control.
And you will not kick him out.
Whatever.
He would be feeling
He'll make
right?
his
Till
strategies he makes
till yesterday,
by-
till yesterday, everything was coming to him, right? And now everyone is bypassing him. So you would feel uncomfortable over there.
No, but if you're a smart guy, he'll take salary for his entire life and move.
No, it's you document
You
it.
will do that.
Make an
Mexico,
example.
the smartest company of
Sometimes
century.
it works in a very positive manner, like you said. Look at the Steve Jobs life.
Right.
Company which he founded, he was kicked out, and then he founded Pixar. He had nothing to do once he got out of it, and it was a very
That's
period in his life
That's
actually changed him. And from Pixar, he again came back to Apple, and then absolutely he got new ideas to start something new. And he said, if I had not been kicked out from Apple, I would have probably not founded Pixar and then moved back to Apple. So absolutely. But there was somebody at initial meeting also. There are people who are, that institute we have in Rockford, and we invite those people, and they have those
Right.
VC and PE section there. He said a lot of young entrepreneurs are taking PE and VC funding, but they don't understand the clauses which they are taking. And after a while, they completely lose control.
Yes.
So those young entrepreneurs at 24, 25, they don't understand what exactly they are entering into.
I agree.
It's very important for them to,
That's why it's very, very important to take a legal or a consultant to make you understand whether drag along, tag along. So many clauses that get built into a legal agreement. Obviously, nobody is going to give you money for free. So they make those appropriate provisions in the agreement.
Faiz, I have a question for you.
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
Since we have new takeover codes,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on it? Will it help MMA or is going to be
It's still in
spoil the party?
it's very subjective. I would say it's
Still tried to be tested in the market?
I think there are 3-4 changes. I think and I think takeover code is only going to be applicable to listed entities, so to say.
Yeah.
Now, in a listed entity scenario, I'll give you the real picture of Indian corporate world. So, barring top 20% of the entities, 60% of the entities are promoter owned. Now promoter owned companies may show that they own 38-39% on paper, but they eventually own more than that. So whatever share they might be holding another 20% through their promoter holding companies, which they will never disclose as a part of promoter holding in the disclosures that they do to either SEBI or any other regulatory authorities. So I think one of the thought process behind SEBI coming out with the new new takeover code is for promoters to disclose their correct true holding. Because tomorrow, if I disclose 38%, I am a very hot acquirer in the market. So 62% of my is public float or a institutional holding that company I am being counted to. So I think that is very, very important. One clause that government wants to avoid is convince promoters to do real reporting of their shareholding. Number two, I think very important is rights of minority shareholders, which is very, very high. So for example, you are a promoter, you own 60%. I buy out 60% from you at double the price. I am only obliged to offer another 15% in the market as per the existing takeover code. So what about the remaining 25% of the people? They're gonna be left high and dry. 800, you were quoted at 400 rupees. I bought you at 800 rupees. I offered it to only 75% of the people. 25% people will only get 400 because that is the current market price of mine. So I think that loophole is what law is trying to. But having said that, there are so many other practical challenges that are there in the proposed takeover code. I think it will require a lot of tweaking before it's made public.
This is question on family-owned businesses,
Yeah.
right? Like it's under all family-owned businesses, they have a cycle of 25 years. So, like you said, our second or third generation, they won't like to pursue in the already existing business model. So, is it a sort of must for these people? How many cases you get in related to diversification within some entrepreneur from textile is getting into automobile or into IT sector or such?
Yeah.
How is it planned?
Okay. Are you talking about Indian businesses or are you talking about global businesses?
Both.
There are different psychologies.
Okay.
Let's understand. As an Indian businessman, I cannot detach myself from the business.
Okay.
I would never leave my business. So how many businesses have been in India you've seen getting sold? One of the points Anuj was making, because I am emotionally attached to the business. As against a Western world. In Western world, I am never emotionally attached to my business. I get a right price, I move out. It doesn't matter. Period. And I am mentally prepared. Okay, I'll retire at 60. I don't care what happens. I get a price. I've lived my life. I have settled my children. I want to live my own life. As against an Indian businessman who is emotionally attached to the nth level. While dying in the bed, he will still want care. So this is a psychology. It's a cultural difference. This is what we do. So now, having said that, I think it's very, very worthwhile for Indian businesses. And let's take any example. Let's take classic examples of Tatas or Birlas or any Reliance for that matter. Now, these businesses already were making money because why they were in monopolistic businesses. When they started, a lot of businesses for them were monopolistic. Like for example, Tata Steel. They owned majority of the mines. Obviously, they will make money. Now, obviously for them, it's and also for the benefit of the country and the economic development of the country, that money has to be used elsewhere. So if they never thought of foraying into, for example, they run an institute called TISS. I don't know if you know it, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, wherein it's a non-profit organization. What they do is 8 entities of Tata Group fund that institute, and they use it for education, social education and all. So I'm saying, obviously, it's always wise for any business to diversify. Diversification can be organic, inorganic, depending on whether they feel okay, I can backward integrate or do a forward integration of my business, or I feel an opportunity in, for example, education sector, and I see okay, I can run it because I am an entrepreneur, I can manage that business. So it depends on what your psychology. You want to forward integrate, backward integrate, or do a parallel business where you feel there is enough opportunity in the market today. So if people don't do that opportunity tomorrow, it works both for the entrepreneur as well as for the benefit of the country also. So tomorrow, today, if we have more, people say. So I was just speaking at an education summit 3-4 days back, and people were saying that we have thousands and thousands of engineering colleges, engineers, being plundered by the thousands, and nobody is bothered about their employability, etc., etc. And their data, and okay, this is one way of putting it across. There is data in the market which substantiate. So for example, let's look at 80s. I'm not talking about 50s or 60s. In the 80s, we hardly used to have private engineering colleges. There were a handful of private engineering colleges, barring 8 or 10. The suicides per student ratio then to now has decreased. Somebody was quoting me. There was a McKinsey report which says to some 1/8 or 1/16. It's a huge number that has got down. Why? Because at that point in time, parents aspired you only for 2 or 3 professions. Either doctor, engineer, third you're useless. You only had 2 options, or lawyers for that matter. Whoever, obviously I can't ignore it. So, you had very limited career options. And not everybody could get into an IIT or an NIT or any other institution. So what did you do? You have so much of peer pressure on you. So people used to either go into depression India was not flourishing then. India was still a developing, I will not call it a developing, underdeveloped economy. So I think now with all that, and if you see, majority of the engineers are not employable. It's not that engineering colleges are flushing out engineers and they're not getting jobs. They're getting jobs. So I think it's a two-way sport. It's good for the economy also. Somebody chose to deregularize private sector. Now there are so many jobs being created. So had they not deregularized it, how could you think that service industry in India would bloom? How do you think KPO, BPO or ITES or IT market will bloom if India would still have continued with 42 or 62 number, I don't recall, engineering colleges? How would have India reached this stage of economic development and growth? So I think